In this episode, I visit the Killing Fields, an absolute tragic place where over 1 million people died in such horrendous ways in Cambodia at the hands of the Khmer Rouge. Hello and welcome to part 13 of my Vietnam and Cambodia adventure. As always, if you've missed any of my previous travelling videos, then you can click the card above me or you can view links in the description box below. Now, in the previous episode, I spoke about how the Cambodian Genocide started and actually what happened. I mentioned that when the Khmer Rouge, an absolute evil brainwash army, wanted to kill people, they would then send them to the killing fields to be executed, and that's what this video is going to be all about. On what life would have been like if you were taken there, and it's not very pleasant at all. So hopefully you enjoy the video and hopefully you learn from this tragic story. We arrived at Cheong Ek Killing Fields, if that's how you pronounce it. It's the most well-known grave site to visit, and currently it's a memorial site as well. And instantly, the moment that you get there, it feels like a very eerie place. It's weird to think back to the early 70s of what this place must have looked like. Because now, if you just stumbled across this place and didn't know anything about it, you'd think it was just like any other kind of field, really. But of course, there were hundreds of graves here, around 343 graves to be exact. One killing field in Cambodia has around 20,000 graves, and all of these different grave sites make up the killing fields. People were first transported here in coaches from all of the different prisons in Cambodia, with anything up to 300 people a day. To start off with, the Khmer Rouge led them in groups of 20 to 30 people blindfolded from the trucks to the edge of the grave area, and were promised that they would be led towards the rest of their family where they'd be waiting for them and they can live in peace after suffering for so long in prison. They made them kneel down in front of the grave area and promised them that when you take your blindfold off, your friends and family are going to be in front of you with their arms held open. However, it was all a lie. They instead would smack them around the back of the head with a hammer, with a hoe, an axe, a bamboo stick, just anything blunt and heavy. They would all fall into the grave, which was huge, at around 5 to 6 meters deep. Some were left unconscious and some were still awake, where another member of the Khmer Rouge would be waiting for them in the pit, where they would one by one slit their throat or disembowel them to make sure no one survived. Absolutely horrific. I guess if there's one way of looking at it, is that if you were unconscious, then you wouldn't really be able to feel anything. But I don't know, it's not exactly very nice to think about. If you weren't killed this way, then sometimes you were made to dig your own grave where you would be buried alive, just for pure fun. And then to make sure you died horribly, the Khmer Rouge then scattered a deadly chemical powder called DDT, a deadly pesticide, over the dead bodies and graves, which would dramatically affect the nervous system and kill you off. It was also used to mask the absolute stench of the dead bodies, so no one in the area would be able to smell them or the victims arriving. Talking about not wanting anyone to know, to drown out the moans, groans and screams as the victims lay helplessly dying, the Khmer Rouge hung loudspeakers from this tree to drown out the sound, to prevent anyone from knowing what was actually going on here, as people were literally working nearby in the fields and they didn't want the secret to be passed on and the lie to get out, that it wasn't a magical place after all. And it worked, because no one survived from the killing fields. No one escaped. Everyone died. Only a certain section of these graves have been dug up and excavated, but there's still around 43 graves left that they are going to leave, because the Cambodians have gone through too much grief and believe that they should just be left alone and just rest in peace, and rightly so as well. We were told about how over the years the bones are starting to show up in the ground. Constant walking on the surface and rainwater are making the bones travel up in the ground to the surface, where you can literally see all sorts of different bones. Forearms and legs to skulls to even teeth. These bones have been excavated and left here since 1980. So to prevent the public from walking on the bones, they built a bridge a couple of years ago in 2006. 16. It's amazing how you can even spot them sometimes, because we're walking through there and instantly our guide just sees them. Here's a bone, Oh, here's another one. Oh, and look at that. Here's another one. It's like, wow, they're everywhere. It's not really a normal thing a human's meant to go through, just walking around and seeing bones lying around on the floor. And we're not talking about animal bones, we're talking about human bones. Is it the same person, or just, I'm guessing, multiple people's bones? Again, it's not really nice to think about, but to me, when walking around, they just look like tree roots. But they won't touch the bones until they've completely come to the surface, to which they will then add them to the collection. And randomly in this field, there is a very poisonous tree which can cause death. It grows a fruit that looks exactly like an orange. I'm not sure if this tree grew before or after the killing was done. A fun fact that our guide mentioned to us was that China supplied Cambodia with all of their weapons and ammunition, and in exchange Cambodia gave them rice, which is why they never really had enough food to eat and starved to death, as it just all went to China. Next, he showed us an extreme act of killing. This part of the killing fields was dedicated to the mothers and children who were killed in vicious ways. However, the Khmer Rouge wanted the families to suffer and not die quickly. They stripped the children and the mothers naked and took their clothing. They then killed the children in front of their mothers with them watching. There were two main ways of killing the children, and one was the chankiri tree or the killing tree. They would grab the children by their small legs and with such force would smack their heads against a tree numerous times until they were dead, and would normally be laughing while doing so. Then they would just throw their lifeless bodies in the pit. Or if that wasn't fun enough for them, the Khmer Rouge would hold the children lengthways in their hands like this. They would throw them up in the air, and on their return was going to be a large knife waiting for them to land on. Oh man, it was horrible. Then once they had killed all of the mother's children and again made them watch, then they just killed them and just chucked them alongside them. And these children were so young. I'm talking literally babies here, anything young as a couple of months old. And the reason why the children were killed, it was to stop them from growing up and taking revenge on their mother's deaths. I guess it makes sense, really. Around 100 victims were tossed in this grave alone. The Khmer Rouge enjoyed killing in such brutal ways. They liked seeing their victims suffer, as they were all brainwashed and believed that they were all enemies and deserved what was coming their way. Another act of killing was again using their surroundings as a weapon. The palm trees that grow there have a very jaggedy edge on the stalk. I think you can guess where this is going. They used these sharp edges as a saw and would slit their victims' throats on it. They explored new and creative ways of killing their victims. And this is the killing tree where the babies' heads were slammed on. Out of respect, tourists have hung wristbands and jewellery all over it. The next grave was all about decapitation. 166 bodies were found with no heads. However, these bodies were all found with clothing on. They were in fact all Khmer Rouge soldiers who had been killed by their own colleagues. Because although they were all soldiers and fighting together, no one trusted anyone and believed that they were all being betrayed. So these people were killed and their heads were individually taken to different villages and camps to scare the other Khmer Rouge soldiers, as if to say, if you don't do what you're told and keep things in order, then the same will happen to you. Because apparently not all Khmer Rouge soldiers were bad or even brainwashed. Some were forced to join, and if they didn't kill victims, then they'd be killed themselves. So literally it was a case of kill or be killed. I guess it kind of makes sense on why they were so evil, as if to prove a point and say that they can kill, because if they didn't, then they would just face the same justice. Here's another grave which housed 450 victims. I then saw a little museum which housed victims' skulls from the killing fields, and seeing this really puts things into perspective. Like me telling you thousands of people died here in this field is different to actually seeing the skulls of victims one after another after another. It just makes it feel more, real, and man, there are a lot of skulls here. The skulls have been examined on how they were killed, on if their skull was smashed in or not. It's a really eerie atmosphere. It feels as if they're just all looking at you. And these are just the victims of 20 to 40 year olds. And that's the end of my Killing Fields episode. Do you think you've learned a little bit more on the genocide? Well, if you want to learn even more, then then you're going to want to tune into next week's episode where I'm going to be talking about Tall Sleng Prison, or S21 Prison, a place that they'd be sent to before they came to the killing fields to be executed, where they'd be interrogated and severely tortured. But if you like the video, please don't forget to like and share the video with your friends and family, and also don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon to be notified when I post new videos. It's something that YouTube asks for you to do. Anyway guys, I'm going to be off now. I'm going to be working on part 3, so I will see you guys all in the next video. Okay, bye bye.